And you're good.
I have once again, I have one question, one big question, and I have been searching for the answer for, I guess it'd be like 48 hours now, and I'm dead serious about this one. I know we goof around a lot, Alex and Dave, but I'm dead serious about this one. I need to get an answer. We're gonna have an expert on today. We have Alex, who's not really an expert. We have Dave Cullinane here.
I'm an expert
We
on
have
nothing.
me, and I don't know the answer to this. What were the cops in Kenosha supposed to do? Can you tell me what were they? I mean, I assume my assumption is they were supposed to tackle him or somehow subdue him from behind. The cop tried a little bit. It was a half-assed kind of effort to grab him and pull him out. When that failed, he went into the car, and at that point, they have to assume he's reaching for his gun. That's my assumption. I don't know. I'm dead serious, Alex, when I say I do not know. I've looked, I've read, we're going to try to get an answer to that today. But what were the cops supposed to do?
Who's gonna give us that answer? Is that going to be LeBron James, or is that going to be a expert?
Well, you know what? Let's talk about LeBron and Chris Paul.
Wait, we didn't even tell Alex we're having a guest on today. We didn't in our pre-show meeting. We didn't even tell him.
We've had him on before. He's a law enforcement expert. He served as a local cop, a national a federal agent. He knows the protocol. He's the one guy I want to talk to because I don't know the protocol, and neither do LeBron James or Chris Paul. Neither does the mayor or the governor of Wisconsin or any of the journalists who've been chiming in on this. I understand it's an emotional thing. That's generally how this works. We start off on an emotional level. That's why you have looting and rioting before you have an investigation. They're mad. They're angry. I understand that. So they react out of anger. Is it too much to ask someone like LeBron, a very important, influential guy, to take a minute, put down the autobiography of Malcolm X, which he's pretending to read, and I don't know, look into this a little bit. Tell me what the cop is supposed to do in that situation. Do you have what's your guess on this? I know you don't know either, Alex. I know the investigation is not complete, and we haven't talked to our expert yet. But what do you think the cop was supposed to do?
I'd like to wait until we get an expert opinion. No, I mean, I mean,
your style. It's not your style.
That's always my style. No, the video looks terrible. I mean, it's 10, 12 seconds, and the guy is going to his car. You're right. We don't know why he's going to his car, but the police officer shoots him in the back of the head like 6 times. I mean,
not the back of the head, the back.
The back. Yeah. I mean, ridiculous.
7 times. I'm telling you, I've read every article I could read on this because I want to know.
But you admit the video looks ridiculous.
Absolutely. But
looks ridiculous.
Again, and I tweeted this out, and I'm serious. It's a serious question. What are the cops supposed to do? I assume, and I've had a few law enforcement people respond, but most people say, you suck. They're not supposed to. Here's what I had as a response from dozens of people on Twitter. They're not supposed to shoot him in the back. Okay, what are they supposed to do? Shoot him in the front?
Or how about not shoot him?
Okay, what if he's reaching for a gun?
We don't know if he was.
We don't, and I don't know when we learned that. I don't know.
But even if he was reaching for a gun, you shoot him multiple times in the back.
Yes, no, you wait till he shoots you. Of course you do. If he's reaching for a gun,
but he was just with his children. I mean, I don't know
that, Alex. I mean, now you sound like one of the dopes that I was hearing from on Twitter.
Well, it was me under my alias accounts.
I wouldn't be surprised. So if he's with his children, well, are the cops supposed to act differently and say, "Oh, there are kids in the car. I'm going to let him grab his gun"?
I just don't know if he was going to have a shootout with police officers with his young kids in the car.
Well, here's the 2 things. Here's the 2 possible scenarios. 1, he's grabbing a gun, and then you have to shoot him. Yeah, I mean, I assume you're allowed to shoot him if he's going for his gun. 2, he's getting behind the wheel and he's driving away, which means he's going to be involved in a high-speed chase with police with his kids in the car.
But what are they even doing with him?
Not only is he a hardened criminal, you've seen his rap sheet, I assume. He had 2 outstanding warrants, one for sexual assault. He pulled a gun on some people in a bar, so he's got some experience with firearms. If that guy was planning to go on a high-speed chase with his kids in the car, he's one terrible father. I mean, you can't say we can't do our job. If our job is to use lethal force, you can't say, well, we can't do that. His kids might see it. That's such a lame emotional response. And I know it. A lot of, famous people and actors and athletes will say his kids were in the car. It sounds like something Joy Behar would say. Cops can't say we can't do our job because a kid might watch, a kid might see it. The reason a kid is witnessing it is because this guy brought his kids, with him and did this with his kids in the car. It's not their fault, but that's beside the point. I still want to know what they were supposed to do. And I'm going to guess our law enforcement expert, George Price, I'm going to guess he would say, you're supposed to grab him, hold him, bring him down. There are a couple of cops there. Their job is to subdue him, like they did with George Floyd, without the neck on the knee and the neck.
We don't know though what this altercation or this interaction rather was about. We don't know that. We don't know whether it was about the sexual assault charge. We don't know if it was about also domestic abuse issues. I mean, clearly this Jacob Blake has a track record, as you said, but we don't know what it was. And Jerry, all we really have is the video, which you even admitted looks ridiculous.
Absolutely.
I mean, the guy is walking away. He's going to his car and he's shot in the back multiple times. It looks terrible. It looks like excessive force. And you're brought in. If he was white, I don't think that would have happened.
Well, how do you say that? I mean, all right, let's do that right now. So you think if he's white and there's all these outstanding warrants and they know he's got a history of violence. He's pulled guns on people before. He's domestic abuse. You point out sexual assault. They know he's a dangerous character. What do you think they let the white guy do? Do you think they let the white guy drive away?
I've not seen video of white guys getting shot in the back multiple times.
Daniel Shaver, he's the one who was on his knees. He was shot and killed by cops who were, I don't know if they weren't charged. I believe they weren't charged. There's plenty of examples of them shooting white people, but
not like this.
That doesn't work for the narrative.
Well, I just haven't seen a lot of the last 3 months we've seen George Floyd and we've seen this. And I think that this could be a different situation than George Floyd. As you said, there's just so much we don't know about this case yet, but all we really have is the video. And it looks like another black man who's been an unarmed black man who's been killed by police.
He's not killed. I believe he's been upgraded.
Well, not killed. I'm sorry. I misspoke, but shot many times.
I heard this morning he's in stable condition, which is good. I hope he survives.
Right.
God, I hope he survives. But here's another question, and I think I know the answer. But here's another question. Is it possible to expedite an investigation because of the emotional reaction? Now, if you're a investigator, if you're the I forget the name, the Criminal Bureau of Investigation in Wisconsin, they're investigating. They may charge these cops, they may not. But in Minnesota, they waited 3 days, I think, to charge Derek Chauvin. And in those 3 days, billions of dollars of damage was done to a black neighborhood, to black people. If Black Lives Matter, is there any way to say, listen, we got this. And I'm not saying charge him because the violence is imminent. I'm saying, could you tell us, was there a gun? Well, if we find out in 3 days that there was a gun and he was reaching for it and his hand was on it, that all changes, right? Doesn't the reaction change? It's like the video withheld by Keith Ellison in Minnesota. He withheld it for, I forget how long, a week, 10 days, that showed the long interaction and it showed the mental state of George Floyd. I mean, he was not stable, and there was no racial element to it at all. There was no racist language. There was
what?
The cops tried for, I think the video is 10, 12 minutes long. They tried to just get him in the car and he wouldn't get in because he kept saying he was claustrophobic, and they didn't know. And at some point they're like, well, just
so you just kill him. I mean, right?
No, I didn't say that. Why? Who said that?
Well, that's what they did.
Well, no, that's what one guy, Derek Chauvin, did.
Right.
He did, and he's been charged, and he's probably going to get convicted, and he's probably going to go away. I don't know. So if he was charged 3 days sooner, would the violence have been lessened? If we knew there was no racial language, no racial element to it, would there have been less carnage in the black neighborhood?
Well,
I know.
I think that with all these protests, and I've been saying this ever since George Floyd, you have to look at them in the context of the times in which we're living. It's not just about George Floyd or Jacob Blake now. It's about the fact that we have the coronavirus, which has disproportionately impacted black and brown communities, from unemployment rates to death rates, etc. It's about communities that just feel totally ostracized from society, and they're sick of authority, and they're lashing out. So I think that every protest is occurring within that context as well.
Well, they're not protests at this point. They're riots.
Every riot. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Well, when you burn a car dealer, and by the way, you burn a church next to the car dealer, which it's a Unitarian church. If you haven't seen the video, it would be funny if it weren't so sad, but it's a Unitarian church with on its sign says Black Lives Matter, and the fire at the car dealer. I don't know if it burned down the church, but it certainly affected the church. And you see, again, destroying black businesses, black neighborhoods. It's just so counterproductive. And I don't know how to, stem the bleeding. Like, if they don't charge these cops, it gets worse, right? If they do charge them and they get acquitted because they followed proper protocol, then it gets worse. So the problem is, the initial problem, the emotional reaction, the outburst of violence from Black Lives Matter and others is just the beginning. What happens if Derek Chauvin gets acquitted because George Floyd was on fentanyl, and some medical examiner comes in and says, yeah, he had a heart attack because of the fentanyl and the other drugs in his system, and the and the jury acquits him? What happens then?
It'll make Rodney King look like child's play.
I agree. It'll be madness. I hope it does. He seems guilty to me. If I'm on the jury, I think I vote to convict, although who knows how these lawyers do. Maybe they convince the jury like they did with Rodney King that the cop was just doing his job. But in Kenosha, right now we could learn today that the cop did what he was supposed to do. It looks terrible. You are right, Alex. It looks brutal. But if there's a gun in the car and cops are trained not to wait until the guy turns the gun on them, and they say, oh no, those cops did what they were supposed to do, are we looking at a whole new round of looting, rioting, burning?
Yeah, we are. Absolutely.
Well, it's sad. And I guess we can't wait for people to get all the facts. God knows we don't generally do that. We're trying to analyze the situation as soon as it happens. It's what we do.
These are people that want to do it. They're just waiting for their opportunity, right? And situations like this, they go and capitalize on. Isn't that just the fact?
And the night, it was 2 nights ago. Did you see the cop get bricked? Cop gets hit in the head with a brick on video, and they are laughing. He goes down. He looks unconscious. He looks like kind of an older guy. Takes a brick on the head, and these kids start laughing and celebrating, going, he got bricked. He got bricked. And they're reaching down with their phones trying to take a close-up picture of this poor bastard, who's probably a decent guy. He didn't kill anybody. He was just out there trying to control the unrest, and he takes a brick in the head, and they think that's so wonderful, and they're laughing. And man, I can't imagine being a cop these days. But I think if you're in the news business, if you're like an anchor or whatever, these news guys, or a reporter, you have to wait. You have to literally say, the investigation is pending. If you're a commentator, if you're whoever, Alex Reimer, if you're Chris Hayes, or
there you go,
Rachel Maddow, or Sean Hannity,
great commentators.
You're not. Hannity. You're probably. You have to do this. You have to react, and you have to ask the question. Did the cop do what he was supposed to do? I fear, in a weird way, that he did, and they're going to say they have to assume he's got a gun. They have to assume he's reaching for a gun. He did not cooperate.
Hold on. Assume is not what you want to do here. You're going to shoot the guy off an assumption?
Well, what if he's a perp in the side of the road and he reaches in his pocket? What do cops do? They say, get your hands up.
Yeah, get your hands out of. Yeah, right. Up. Yeah, right. Right.
If they don't,
Well, they don't say they don't shoot. They say put your hands out of your pocket and put them up.
No, but if the guy says screw you and reaches for the pocket, they shoot him. They
do.
Yes. What do you think they do? Wait for him to pull a gun?
How do they know he has a gun?
They don't. That's my point. They assume he does.
So they shoot. So shoot first, ask questions later.
In New York City, when Amadou, I forget his name, the gentleman that got shot 41 times that Bruce Springsteen immortalized with the song 41 Shots, he was reaching for his wallet, but they assumed it was a gun. Now, was 41 shots excessive? According to Springsteen, it was. But when you say hands up, put your hands on the wheel, put them where I can see them, and they don't do it, the cop, I believe, has to use, lethal force. He can't wait to say, oh, that was only a wallet. Oh, okay. Because it might be a gun, right? So we don't wait. We talk about it. We analyze it. We ask the questions. Why can't someone like LeBron James wait? Why can't someone like Chris Paul wait? Why do they just react viscerally, see the video, and just say they're hunting us in the street?
Well, I mean, because we are not black, and we don't know what it's like. And when you see a picture of another black man, and again, we don't know what happened really in this video. We know that the police were responding to some sort of domestic dispute, but we don't know really any more particulars than that. And when you see, again, we're just going off the short video we have, it looks terrible. And there's a history of black men being hunted by police in this country.
There is not. I mean, not a recent history. And
not a recent history. Come on. I mean, we can't even. Ridiculous.
You and I don't know. Well, we've gone over the numbers before.
I know. I don't feel like I'm just saying, but why? I mean, they're asked. I mean,
they're not hunting black guys in the street. And if that's a white guy with that criminal record, all those warrants, and they try to bring him in, and he reaches for a gun, they do the same thing. But you think you and I don't know what it's like to be Jacob Blake, and I would agree. Does LeBron James know what it's like to be Jacob Blake?
More so than we do, yeah.
Wow. I mean, LeBron James was on the cover of Sports Illustrated when he was 16. He's been famous most of his life.
Oh, Jerry, but you've been around long enough where you've heard stories.
You think racist cops are hunting LeBron James?
I don't think he's being hunted necessarily, but I think that we have heard countless stories of prominent people of color, prominent black people and black men really getting pulled over and harassed by police. I mean, Michael Wilbon tells that story of getting pulled over in his own neighborhood. I mean, there are countless stories like that. It would not surprise me one bit if somebody like LeBron James has been pulled over in his life recently for driving in a nice neighborhood and a cop thinking that's suspicious. It wouldn't surprise. I think we would have heard about it, no doubt. But I'm saying that this stuff happens. Just because you're famous doesn't mean you are exempt from this kind of harassment.
I think we use the word privilege all the time, white privilege. I think LeBron for most of his life has been very privileged, and I think maybe he felt left out. He hadn't lived that experience, and maybe felt left out, so he made up some nonsense about racist graffiti on his LA mansion.
Right. Because LeBron doesn't get enough coverage or positive coverage, so he needed to lie.
Never saw, and the cops never saw because the people whose caretakers at his home removed the racist graffiti before the cops arrived. Now, to me, that's very questionable, but we don't have to get into that again. I know you still believe Jussie Smollett, I think. Don't you, Alex?
What's wrong with him?
You want to give George a call before we
before we get back? I want to get back to LeBron because I got a question about LeBron and his reading material. He wants you to know he's very learned and well read, but I have my doubts because
the only thing I know about LeBron is he's a triple-double machine, and the Lakers.
That's the voice of overnights on CBS Radio. Alex Reimer, he's here. Dave Cullinane's here. We're going to be joined by George Price, a very experienced law enforcement expert who knows more about this stuff than we do. We don't love to have guests on, as you know. Guests often are very boring, but sometimes you need them. And I swear to God, I was looking for people last night. I know Fox News was, I think most news channels were preoccupied with the convention. And we'll get to that. There were some great speakers at the Republican convention.
Oh, it's incredible. It's so good.
But here's what you need. You need to know if these cops were following protocol. I know it looks bad, Alex. I know it looks awful. It definitely looks awful. I know he gets shot in the back. That sounds terrible. But no one can tell me what they were supposed to do. I'm telling you, I got 1,000 responses from my tweets. Nobody really could tell me what they were supposed to do.
Well, let's give this guy a call and see if he
Let's
can tell
talk to
us.
George
All right,
Price.
hold on, we're calling him.
All right,
Hang
we'll
on, we
give
do
him
it
a
on the
call.
fly.
Look at us. We're improvising here.
We're just
I know you
calling.
guys were at the Legacy Club today. Would have joined.
You weren't invited. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what the hell? Are you afraid of me? It's because I went to P-Town this weekend. You think I have COVID?
Here we go. And I wanted an emotional liberal and crazy emotional liberal, and you fit the bill.
There you go. You got George. He knows you're live. There you go.
All right, George Price.
Yep. George Price.
Ooh,
How are you guys?
good, George. How are you, George? As we've talked before, as a former police officer, a former senior special agent with the DEA, and a former DA in the Middlesex District Attorney's Office. I have one question above all others, George, and I didn't hear anyone address it for the last 48 hours. And hopefully you can answer it, or at least help us out here. What were the cops in Kenosha who shot Jacob Blake in the back? What were they supposed to do in that situation?
So I watched the video, and actually another video came out this morning. I don't think it really added much color to what occurred, but if you watch the video carefully, you see both officers coming from the other side of the car, and they both had their guns out. That only happens in a couple circumstances. One, they couldn't see the defendant's hands there. That would have been one reason. The other news reports are that they were screaming at him, drop the knife. So he's got an edged weapon in his hand, and he's climbing into a car full of people, not necessarily knowing who those people are or why they're there. My understanding is they got a radio call for either a domestic dispute or a fight. Right. So now you've got someone climbing in with a knife, and they have no idea who these people are in the car, and they didn't have any choice at that point. They're either in fear of their own lives or more likely the people's lives in the vehicle. I mean, it's the problem with the press, and the problem the way these things get reported is they always report on them objectively. So they're looking at this video saying, oh, he shouldn't have done that. But the standard in court and the standard that these officers will be held to by both the DA's office there and in a civil court is, what was their subjective view? Were they in fear of their own lives or the lives of someone else? And, normally you would never close that space, that distance of space between someone with an edged weapon like that. You wouldn't close in on them and grab that guy's shirt like he did.
Well, I was going to say,
that tells me they did everything they could right then to not do that. Right, they're at the moment of last resort here, and they had to stop him. And deadly force is really the only way to do it. That guy could have turned around and stabbed that officer right in the neck, and we'd be going to his funeral today instead of someone else's.
That's a great point, George. I asked that on Twitter. I asked it earlier in this show. I said, maybe what the cops should have done, they had him outnumbered, is tackle him, like subdue him, like you see often with suspects.
Yeah, and you would think that too. I looked at their gun belts. I didn't see any batons on them, and I didn't see any tasers on them.
They tased him. I believe they tased him, and it didn't work. I mean,
it didn't work. Well, all the more reason that the shooting is completely justified in my view. I mean, could you have tackled him? Yes. It takes a millisecond to turn around and stab someone in the neck. I've been in physical fights with defendants where they reach back and stab with a broken bottle, and this stuff is it's full of adrenaline. There's a lot of excitement in the video. You can see that, and these guys are just making the best decision they can in a millisecond. And we get to sit here and talk about it for days and weeks on end. We got some politicians who, in that state, that governor himself condemned the shooting before the investigation had even started. Never mind finished.
It was
George. Oh, go ahead, George. With all due respect, George, and you obviously have been in these situations before, how can you say the shooting was justified without knowing what he was going into his car for or knowing any other details? How can you say that?
Well, I do know details. I know that the press has reported that they were
okay, but you don't know. But you don't know what he was going into his car for. So.
But he had a knife.
But he had a knife in his hand. He had a knife in his hand. He's climbing into a car full of people. and then
people who were his young kids though. They were
don't ever
his,
want someone getting mobile in a vehicle with a knife full of people they don't know who they are. It doesn't work. They're in fear of their lives. They should be. The guy wasn't obeying their command. Period.
But George, do you assume those cops, are they supposed to assume when he reaches in his car that he's going for a gun? We don't know yet whether he was or not, but are they supposed to, does that matter? In other words, are they just supposed to assume the worst?
Absolutely, because there's plenty of justified shootings where there's no weapon at all. But if you have someone that's not obeying commands and say they're reaching under a seat or reaching into their waistband, this is why the standard is so important on how these officers ultimately get judged. It's subjective. It's what did they think at the time, not what we think watching the video. Did they think that they were, either going to get stabbed or that someone in that vehicle was going to get seriously hurt if this guy got mobile with that vehicle? And that would be the only reason in my mind watching that video why they would ever close that space between someone with an edged weapon. Someone with an edged weapon can cover 21 feet before you can pull your gun and shoot. So that's why they always tell you to stay that many feet away if someone's holding an edged weapon. So, for them to close that distance, scream, drop the knife, and he's climbing into a car, I see a completely justified shooting here.
Do you think is there a reason we have not heard whether it was a gun or not? I mean, I asked this again on Twitter. I said, does it matter if there's a gun or not? I mean, because he's reaching in the car.
It depends on every shooting is different, right? So, again, it comes back to a standard of you're in fear of their own lives. If you have someone that's not obeying commands and reaching into their waistband, or these guys they don't get to decide in 3 seconds. They have to decide in a quarter second, am I going to go home today or not? Let's say he was reaching for a gun and he turned around and shot them. I mean, does it matter at that point? If these guys are in fear of their lives and they have to make that decision in that millisecond, it's really their decision. Do I want to go home today, or do I want to wait and see if this guy has a gun? The problem is that the guy's climbing into a car, we think with a knife. They've closed the space, and they're about to, he's about to get in a vehicle full of people. For all we know, we have no idea. They had no idea who those people were in the car.
And if his plan,
it turned out it was his kids.
Yeah. If his plan was,
but the cops don't know that. The cops don't know that when they're pulling up on the scene. They could have been the other person's kids. Sitting up, there was 20 people around the car at the time. They don't know whose kids those are. No one, I doubt that anyone stopped and said, those are his kids in there. That didn't happen. I didn't see that.
George, if his plan was to go engage in a high-speed chase, to take off with the kids in the car, by the way, to take off, are they justified in using lethal force at that point if they just think he's getting in his car to take off?
Yeah.
No, I would say no. I mean, that's, again, they have to evaluate the situation, but I think the reason that there was a shooting there was, based on everything I've seen in the press anyway, he had a knife, he wasn't dropping it, he wasn't obeying commands, he's climbing into a vehicle, you see him reaching down, right? So whether he's reaching down for either another weapon or to get in the vehicle, and I don't know if one officer fired or they both did. I don't know what the facts are here. I know
there was 7 shots. So is that
seven shots?
Does that
in and of itself seems to me, again, we weren't there. We don't get to see the rest of the video. We don't get to see whether or not he stopped moving after the first shot. My guess is he did not. Most officers typically shoot till the threat ceases. That's what you're taught in the academy. That's what I taught officers and agents for years. You shoot till the threat stopped, and you're able to completely stop the actions of the defendant and or suspect. So they made those decisions. We can't decide if that was excessive or not till you see the whole video, honestly.
So you think if this goes to trial, if they charge these cops, you think they walk, which will be wonderful for the, the people in that city, because they'll just destroy businesses all over again.
Oh, it's incredible. It's incredible. All before you have all the facts. And, white, red, doesn't matter, yellow, green, whatever the defendant is, they were worried about a guy with a knife, not about the color of his skin when they decided to pull their guns and try to get him to stop what he was doing. Period. Cops don't think that way. They're trying to stop an imminent threat. It had nothing to do with the color of anyone's skin.
Do the cops know when they're there? The cops know his rap sheet. They know this history, right? Because he's He's had experience,
Well,
gun
that's
charges.
that's a good question. They certainly could have, that's another factor that goes into the subjective view. So if they did know it, we don't know if they knew it or not. But if they did know him, and he was known to police, and he was known to be violent, he's known to commit assaults and batteries. He had domestics, I think, on his.
He pulled a gun on. He pulled a gun on some people in a bar.
He pulled a gun. So right there, my threat level goes up exponentially. When we used to go out on the street when I worked for the federal government, we would run the rap sheets on defendants, and everyone in a briefing got to know what the rap sheet was of the person we were going after. So we knew if they were a particularly high threat level. It adds to that tension as far as making certain decisions. If someone's not obeying your commands and they have a history of violence, you're going to take that very differently than someone who maybe doesn't and is high or has got some other issue going on that they're not listening to you. But someone with a violent background that's not obeying commands, you're going to treat very differently than someone if you didn't know that. So
You've said a couple times, George, that you think the officers felt threatened, and thus you think that the use of this kind of force was justifiable. But and I asked this question genuinely. I mean, obviously, being a police officer, being put in dangerous situations is part of the job. So at what point, is just feeling threatened, and is that enough to use this kind of force, or I guess where does the level rise where it is then okay? Because you're in these kind of situations all the time, I imagine.
Well, the officers are going to be the ones that have to articulate that, right? That they were in fear of their lives or the lives of someone else. And again, every incident, every use of force is different. If you've got someone sitting, somewhere in a building or a hotel shooting a machine gun out into a crowd, it's not really that difficult to figure out that it's okay to shoot this guy. Situations like this are a little different, and that's why the subjectivity is so important, and frankly so disturbing when you watch the press that they leave that analysis completely out of the picture. That's why we should always wait till these investigations are completed before anyone rushes to judgment. And we've got cities burning now without knowing all the facts, and to me it's just abhorrent that we're not giving these guys the same constitutional rights that every defendant has on the street. We shouldn't be judging them. They have an absolute, presumption of innocence and that they did the right thing. Let them do their investigation, and then we'll figure out what happens from there. But to jump to conclusions, our world is nuts right now.
We all know what Derek Chauvin should have done in Minneapolis. He should have taken his knee off George Floyd's neck. I just don't know what these guys in Kenosha were supposed to do. But George, I really appreciate it. What we needed was someone like you to clear this up. You've answered more questions in the last 10 minutes than I've heard any of these talking heads and cable TV do in the last 48 hours. So we appreciate it.
Good.
Thanks. Good talking to you, George.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks.
That is George Price, former cop, former special agent for the DEA, and a guy who trained police, who knows the protocol. I'm telling you, Alex, that doesn't bring me any joy to say these cops were just doing their job and following the protocols, because that's not going to work. That's not going to satisfy the mob. It is heartbreaking. If you haven't seen the videos, I implore people every day to check out the videos in Portland and Seattle before this. But now in Kenosha, there was a whole new round of rioting, of looting, of burning, of just insanity. There's a couple of videos. One Black Lives Matter rioter pulling a gun on a cameraman. It's scary. This is Kenosha, Wisconsin. I hadn't even heard of the friggin' place till 2 days ago. A city of 100,000.
An old manufacturing city. I'm sure it's very desolate and impoverished.
And and a guy trying to make a living selling used cars. His cars are all burned up now. I mean, it looks like something again out of Fallujah, or somewhere in Iraq or Afghanistan. It's heartbreaking, and it is most impacting poor Black people, working class Black people, small businesses run by Black people or minorities, and they're getting devastated. because these people don't want to wait. These Black Lives Matter rioters, and by the way, I don't think Antifa's even arrived there yet, but they're coming.
Good. Well, I'm going up to Kenosha soon, so I'll let you know how that goes. The only thing
The problem is, Alex, it's close to Chicago, so they can just all those Chicago-based, rioters and looters, can say, "Let's go. We're going to Kenosha." And I don't know if there's any Omega watch shops in Kenosha like there was in Chicago, but they'll make do. They'll make do with what they can. If you haven't seen the video, they are trashing all kinds of small businesses the last couple nights. And once they clear these guys, exonerate these cops, which I fear they will, it's going to get worse.
The one thing I would just say to George, and I asked him this once, is he said many times that he doesn't like the rush to judgment. He's doing the same thing. I mean, he's saying that he thinks the shooting is justifiable without knowing what he was reaching in the car for, the exact specifics behind this.
Hold on. He's an expert. That's why we had him on. He trains cops, and I just want to know what the protocol is.
Well, no, right. But to say that the shooting is justifiable without knowing really anything besides the video is also rushing to judgment. I mean, he's doing the same thing that I'm doing.
But I asked the question, and I think I know the answer is it doesn't matter if there's a gun there. If they think he's reaching for a gun, they can't wait to see it. It'll be pointed at their face. And when I asked you earlier, the question is, could they have tackled him? Two guys. And the answer is they could have, but he might have stabbed him in the throat because he had a knife. I'm telling you,
my screen was dirty.
I'm telling you, this is not gonna go well. And here's the thing that'll drive me nuts: is he's right. George is right. The friggin' governor condemning the cops before he had any facts at all. Took one look at the video, and you know what he did? He inspired the mob to go out and riot and loot. These Democrat politicians are part of the problem. They're co-conspirators in this madness. We learned yesterday or 2 days ago.
Who could condemn it enough to stop any of this stuff in the moment? Like who's going to do it?
You know what you got to do? You got to defend the cop. If the cop's in the right, you don't immediately side with the mob. We learned 2 days ago that the mayor of Portland, Ted Wheeler, ordered. It was confirmed. I believe this. There was a report where he was either on tape or he was confirmed saying, "Stand down," telling the cops not to try to stop Antifa for burning the friggin' city. These Democrats have lost their minds. That's why you're going to hear a lot about this. That's why you heard about it last night at the Republican convention. You'll hear for the next 3 days. This is the card that Trump has to play. This is the winning hand. We are for law and order. They are with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Has to keep it that simple, and he has to repeat it over and over again. That's what matters. He'll be bragging about building a wall or moving an embassy in Jerusalem. That doesn't matter. What matters is, Biden's with Antifa and Black Lives Matter. We are with the cops. That's how he wins Middle America. Wisconsin is a very important state. Do you want to be with the guys who burnt the car dealer down and hit the cop with the brick? Do you want to be with them, or do you want to be with law and order? Simple.
I think Middle America is probably more concerned with staying in their homes, getting back to work, being able to go outside, period, without a mask on.
Back to work. Joe Biden said 2 days ago he would shut the country down if he were in charge.
Then we would need more government support to pay people to stay home. You can't have one without the other. And I think a Biden administration with Democrat-controlled Congress would do that. They'd provide more support to the American people.
People like you, Alex, people like ESPN, everybody on ESPN, they love LeBron James and Chris Paul and whoever else, any athlete who will speak up. They love Colin Kaepernick, even though he doesn't speak up, but whatever. He kneels. He hates America. He hates cops. So they like that. Do you find this irresponsible? Because I do. Chris Paul, big hero in the game last night. And I don't think he talked about the game at all. Didn't he go right into talking about Jacob Blake?
Goes right into it.
Do we have Chris Paul? We have Chris Paul's sound after the game. Now I ask you, he's getting ready for a playoff game. He's preparing. He's, playing in a game. Do you think he has all the facts, or do you think he's just operating on emotion?
Of course.
That's all good and well. I just want to send my prayers out to Jacob Blake and their family. The things that, we decided to come down here to play for, and we said we're going to speak on the social injustice and the things that continue to happen, to our people. It's not right. It's not right. So the win is good, but voting is real. I'm going to challenge all my NBA guys, other sports guys. Let's try to get our entire teams registered to vote. You know what I mean? There's a lot of stuff going on in the country. Sports is cool, it's good and well. It's how we take care of our families, but those are the real issues that we got to start addressing.
What continues to happen to our people? What?
They get shot by police.
Okay. Does it matter if George Price is correct and it was justified? Does that matter to Chris Paul?
Well, I'm sure it maybe would, but I mean, Chris Paul, I'm sure it would, sure. But Chris Paul is speaking on emotion like we all are at this point. I mean, what's the issue with that? He has a huge platform and he's speaking his mind. I'm
trying not to put it that way. I'm trying not to. And I think we've advanced the conversation.
That's what we do.
We need to have the conversation. That's her favorite line about everything. Reparations. We should have that conversation. But everything changes, Alex, if they come out and say, it won't affect the Black Lives Matter rioters, but it'll affect the media. It'll affect people like you and me if they come out today and say, sorry, folks, that was justified. They did their job. It's not going to be good for the small business. Will that change Chris Paul or LeBron James's mind if they come out and say, the cops did their job?
Well, it depends on what the other details of the investigation are. If they just say, I don't think they're just going to take their word for it, nor should they. I mean, you go back to the police report on George Floyd, that was ridiculous. I mean, it was a total lie. So police officers lie in these things. And so you need more information than just their word for it.
It is amazing how much we have, though. It seems like everything's on video. I don't know what would have happened here, what the story would have been 20 years ago if there were no video. But in this case, we know a lot. I mean, we don't know everything. We know a lot. And again, if they tried to tackle him, I mean, he did grab his shirt and kind of pull him. If Jacob Blake just turned around and shoved that knife into his neck, I mean, then you'd say, of course they can shoot him. But yeah, he didn't. He could have stabbed him. He was close enough. And
but
that's a lethal weapon. I mean, that's a knife. But do we have LeBron James? Because nothing is complete unless we have the Oracle himself, the wise man, LeBron James. Take a break from reading Malcolm X's autobiography and chime in on Jacob Blake.
If you're sitting here telling me that there was no way to subdue that gentleman or detain him or to just before the firing of guns, then you sitting here and you lying to not only me, you lying to every African American, every black person in the community, because we see it over and over and over. There was multiple, if you watch the video, there was multiple moments where if they wanted to, they could have tackled him, they could have grabbed him. They could have done that. And why does it always have to get to a point where we see the guns firing and his family is there, the kids are there, it's in broad daylight, and who knows? I mean, if that video is not being taken by that person across the street, do we even know if we even see that video? There's talks about that the cops didn't even have their body cams on. That's a possibility. It's just quite frankly, it's just fucked up in our community. And I know people get tired of hearing me say it, but we are scared as black people in America.
All right. He asked some good questions. I think we have answers. Could they have tackled him? No, he had a knife in his hand. I asked the very question the first time I saw it. Could they have just subdued him? They had him outnumbered. There were two cops right there. Could they have grabbed him, held him? Good question, LeBron. The answer is no. No, he had a knife. If you grab him and try to subdue him and he stabs you in the neck, then you die. You don't go home that day to your family. They don't care that his kids are in the car. That's irrelevant. It has to be irrelevant unless you're just on an emotional level and say, isn't that awful? His kids saw him shot. Well, that's his fault. If he did what he did, which led to the shooting with his children in the car, that's on him. And when he says this keeps happening, what keeps happening? Guys like Jacob Blake hold knives and refuse to follow the orders of the police? Yeah, that keeps happening. If he cooperated, he wouldn't be in a hospital today. So I think it's irresponsible of LeBron James. He's not waiting for the facts. He's not doesn't sound like angry, like he's not trying to rile up the mob, but he is operating out of ignorance.
Wait, he was speaking genuinely. I mean, he just saw the video. This was recorded. This happened yesterday. He was speaking. He wasn't yelling like Kimberly Guilfoyle. He wasn't enraged. He wasn't incensed. I mean, he was asking, you said it yourself, good questions.
Yes.
I don't see any issue with what he or Chris Paul said.
But he asked the question. He says, you can't tell me there's not another way to detain him or subdue him.
Yeah.
Okay. I asked the same question, and George Price basically just cleared it up for me.
Okay, one guy. I mean, great.
But there's a knife in his hand, Alex. You understand that. I mean, this is objective here. If you try to grab a guy and he's a badass, we know this guy, he's got a criminal record, he's a violent guy. If you try to grab him and he has a knife in his hand,
I don't, yeah, but I don't know. I mean, again, the other assumption that George made is, we don't know anything about this besides the fact that there was a domestic dispute. We don't know if they ran any background on Jacob Blake. I mean, I'm assuming they just don't know him by face. Oh yeah, that's a guy who, in July was charged with this, charged with that. I mean,
they might. But
so you think he's such a notorious criminal in a city of 100,000? I mean, maybe, but
not a big city. But yeah, you're right. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. Maybe one of these cops arrested him in that.
Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
But and don't they run when there's a warrant? Don't they know what the warrant is for, and don't they know that the guy has a rap sheet? But I mean, you don't assume because he has a rap sheet he's going to shoot you, but you do think if he has a knife in his hand and I tackle him, that I could get stabbed. And I mean, again, LeBron's not trying to rile up the mob. I'll give you that, but he's talking about this keeps happening over and over again. I think they're separate issues. I mean, these guys cannot be lumped in, at least at this point, with Derek Chauvin. They can't be, you're as bad as he was. You're murdering innocent black guys. That's just too much of a generalization. And that's irresponsible when you're as influential as LeBron James. But all right, you want to get to my girl Kimberly Guilfoyle?
Let's get to her.
You want to talk about smart, responsible African Americans? Yes. I will get to, because I mean, I think the last night we saw just about every African American elected official in the Republican Party, and they were all great. But first, and we'll get to, I know you want to do this story. I know you do, Alex Reimer, the Jerry Falwell Jr. story.
Oh my God, this is great for us. You know what I was thinking? I was thinking that, like, if we were back on WEI, me and you would have opened the show for like 30 minutes of Jerry Falwell talk, and Curtis and Ken would get a million texts. I can't believe it. The Celtics are playing tonight, and you're leading up with Jerry Falwell for 30 minutes.
Nobody, I don't care who you are, right wing, left wing. I don't care if you're, you like Jerry Falwell or not. It's a funny story. It's a great story that I, for one, can't relate to. I don't know about you, Alex. And we're going to talk to Alex about the Tom Brenneman story, which we talked about a lot last week, but I want to get his take on that. But first, my take on Shea Concrete. Shea Concrete's a great company. It's a fourth-generation owned and operated business that's working hard day in and day out to be a trusted precast concrete partner. Shea's a local company, but they're all over New England. They have 4 state-of-the-art manufacturing facilities, probably have one near you, and let's not forget, they're hiring. Great place to work if you're looking for a job. If you're a contractor, let me tell you some of the products Shea can deliver to your job site ready for installation. Water and wastewater products, barriers and bullards, stairs and bulkheads, electrical and communication products. The list goes on and on. It's not just, precast. They do lots of things. They can do it all for you and your business. If you're an engineer, Shea can help you design your next project. Give them a call for more information or for an estimate, or just log on to sheaconcrete.com, where you can also look for a job. If you're interested, they're always looking for CDL drivers and looking for personnel at all their plants. You can check out the website, sheaconcrete.com, or just send your resume to jobs@sheaconcrete.com. All right, let's do the convention, then we'll do Jerry Falwell, because I'm sorry, I have to laugh. I have to laugh at poor Jerry Falwell's misery. I'm like Katie Hill. I'm going to enjoy a little Schadenfreude with the Jerry Falwell Jr. story. I know I'm totally objective on this, totally down the middle. So far, one night in, the Republican convention is 1,000 times better than the Democrat convention. It's better produced. It's better choreographed. I mean, it looks more creative. It feels more live, even though it's not necessarily live. A lot of energy and stuff like what Trump did in the middle, where he brought a bunch of people who were former hostages and he freed them. And he just sat with them in the Oval Office, and they all sat there and said, "You're the greatest, Mr. You saved me." I mean, it's just simple.
I can't believe you don't think this is entirely a Donald Trump production. Like, I think top to bottom, I think he wrote the script to this entire thing.
I mean, he can't really write, so I don't know if he did that, but he definitely has planned it out, I think.
I mean, it is more, flamboyant than the Democrats. And what they're going to do is just hammer away at this theme like the Democrats are pessimistic and they think we're all doomed, and they portray America as, a terrible place built on slavery and all that and systemic racism and everything else. And the Democrats sit there the Republicans sit there and they bring out that wonderful Kim Klacik, whatever her name, from Baltimore.
Oh, right.
Who did that spectacular TV commercial. She's running for Congress. She's running for Elijah Cummings' seat. They had Tim Scott, African-American senator, who had the line of the night. I don't know if you have it, Dave, but talking about his life going from cotton to Congress
yes.
in one lifetime. Can we hear Tim Scott?
Yeah.
If a white person was coming. He suffered the indignity of being forced out of school as a third grader to pick cotton, and he never learned to read or write. Yet, he lived long enough to see his grandson become the first African American to be elected to both the United States House and the United States Senate in the history of this country. Our family went from cotton to Congress in one lifetime. And that's why I believe the next American century can be better than the last. There are millions of families just like mine all across this nation, full of potential, seeking to live the American dream. And I'm here tonight to tell you that supporting the Republican ticket gives you the best chance of making that dream a reality.
See, the Democrats never portray, this country as a place of great, opportunity and hope.
Right, they never do.
Progress.
Yeah, right.
It's
never.
all, you're doomed. If you're black, you have no chance. If you grow up, if you're working class, you have no chance to ever become.
Hold on. Joe Biden's whole story is about how he came from this middle class background and worked his way up and dealt with all this tragedy.
He stole that. He plagiarized that. That's not his real story.
Right. Yeah.
He made that all up.
Yeah.
But it must kill you guys, you Democrats, to see all these successful, optimistic minorities. The guy from Cuba.
He sucked. He was the worst one. Can we talk about him? I mean, first of all, what a late.
Why did he suck, Alex?
Oh my God! I mean, he donated first of all a ton of money, a shit ton of money to the RNC right before speaking. I wonder how he got that slot. And also, I mean, the Fidel Castro shit. I'm sorry, about 50 years old on that. I mean, really? And
you noticed, Alex, that your party's embraced.
And anyway, Joe Biden, who has been a sycophant for credit card companies, banks, his entire career in politics, is not Fidel Castro. That is an absurd comparison. Okay, nobody buys it. Nobody believes it.
Alex,
it's
stupid. We know Biden's just a placeholder. We know the real power behind the throne is AOC and Bernie Sanders.
AOC, who spoke for all of 1 minute at the DNC? No, 1
minute and 42 seconds.
Okay, right. John Kasich spoke for more time at the Democratic National Convention than AOC, who you think is a leader of the party.
Why his name is Maximo Alvarez. Why do you hate him? I don't know.
Because that speech could have been written in 1972. It could have been written in 1982, 1992. I mean, it's old shit, and nobody believes it.
It's not old shit when AOC and Bernie Sanders are now the powers in the party.
AOC, who again spoke for 1 minute, and Bernie Sanders, who spoke for on Monday night, 3 days before the president. The Democratic Party.
They bragged that they've dragged Biden to the left. They've embraced socialism. Right. And this is a guy who knows real socialism, and he's telling you.
Fidel Castro is not socialist. Germany is socialist. The Scandinavia is socialist. Cuba was a communist dictatorship.
Well, and Alex has to go.
Let me play this guy. This was pretty good.
My name is Maximo Alvarez. I live in Miami, Florida. not far from the state of Florida, which is in just a 90-mile wide blue strip on a map for me. It divides freedom from fear. It divides the past from the present, from the future. I know all about the past. I'll never forget my own. My family has fled totalitarianism and communism more than once. First, my dad from Spain, then from Cuba. But my families don't run away. By the grace of God, I live the American dream, the greatest blessing I ever had. My dad, who only had a 6th grade education, told me, don't lose this place. You'll never be as lucky as me. I'm speaking to you today because my family is done abandoning what we rightfully earned. There's no place to hide. I'm speaking to you today because President Trump may not always be politically correct. He's in fact a successful businessman, not your average career politician. Our president is just another family man, a friend, and most important, our elected commander-in-chief.
Okay, so I have 3 lies there. First of all, the lie that he's a successful businessman, wrong. The lie that he is a family man, Jerry. I mean, family man, Donald Trump, really?
Whole family speaking at his convention.
Yeah,
I think Aaron's speaking tonight. They're going to bring back what's her name? Marla Maples will probably speak. Tiffany's going to speak tonight, which is
I'm excited for that.
Little strange, but that guy was great. I got little tingles up my spine. Andrew Pollock, whose daughter Meadow was murdered in the Parkland shooting, was spectacular. Nobody sounds like a real person like Andrew Pollock. I'm so glad he's on my team. There was just one good speaker after the next. Herschel Walker was excellent, talking about being a friend of Trump's for 37 years. But they've already had more powerful African-American speakers in one night than the DNC did in a week.
Who?
The RNC last night was one kind of smart, persuasive.
Really? So the vice president of Jerry, the person on the ticket is a woman of color in the Democratic Party. How can you say that?
Yeah, and she's a mean girl. She's
okay. Well, I mean, you said they know people. I mean, Jerry,
no one over. She won nobody over. In fact, after they named her, the Republicans Trump got a bounce out of that decision. But you want to get to Kimberly Guilfoyle because there's always somebody that goes a little off the rails.
Well, her and Don Jr. did a mountain of coke in the back, obviously.
But she came out and she was there to fire up the crowd, even though there isn't really a crowd. But it
fired up.
If there were a crowd, her job would be to get them all fired up. And I don't know if we have any. KG
She would have been successful.
Ladies and gentlemen, leaders and fighters for freedom and liberty and the American dream, the best is yet to come.
Oh my God.
This right there, the crowd's supposed to erupt.
I can't believe that person was on television for as long as
she was. She was.
First of all,
but that's insane.
She gave it all up for Don Jr. She gave up 5 and all her other gigs just so she could travel the country with Don.
Well,
Jr.
she gets paid $15,000 a month from the Trump campaign. That's pretty good work.
I think she's probably making a little more than that on Fox. But
but here's my thing though. I'm amazed that Kimberly Guilfoyle was married to Gavin Newsom.
I know, that's amazing.
What does that say about them? What
I
is?
don't know. They were the original Conways. George and Kellyanne Conway. By the way, I tweeted this out. You always wondered when you look at George Conway, who hates Trump more than anybody, and Kellyanne Conway, who was as responsible as anybody for getting Trump elected. And they were married and they have kids, and one of their daughters is rebelling. She's looking for emancipation. She's 15 years old, which is insane. But anyway, both Kellyanne and George stepped down from their roles. Kellyanne's no longer in the White House. George is no longer with the Lincoln Project. And you always wondered, how does that marriage work? And we got our answer. It doesn't. It doesn't
work.
you know, and I'm
And
surprised.
that's not just like political disagreement. That's literally like
Oh,
both
yeah.
ends of the spectrum.
I know,
That
they-
is
they
And
are
that seems to be a really sad situation. I mean, their daughter is tweeting at she's 15. You know, it's that seems like a really sad.
You know, and she shouldn't be involved. We shouldn't be writing stories about their 15-year-old's tweets or their TikTok video. But
No, it's sad.
I thought it was a great first night. They had like national anthem, Pledge Allegiance, a prayer from some priest in New York. All those good red-blooded American things. Hopefully, Lee Greenwood makes an appearance at some point. Maybe Ted Nugent. but I'm sorry, I'm into it. I watched all the Democrat stuff, and it just feels so important. We've heard it many times in our lifetimes that it's the most important election ever. And it feels like legit this time. Does not feel legit. We have two very different visions of America. You got the dark vision of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Oh, yeah,
and
so
we're all
dark.
doomed. We're all going to die. You know, everyone's racist.
Well, everyone is dying.
Not everybody.
Not everyone. You're right. Only 170,000 plus.
Only
Coronavirus.
really old people and really fat people at this
Well,
point.
that's a lot of the country, Jer. That's a lot
true.
of Trump supporters too, by the way.
I saw the death rate of I forget what country it was. Was it European? Or maybe it was Japan against ours, and ours is higher. And it's just simple. It says we have a lot more obese people. And
Right. Well, which is why, I mean, to be honest, that is the best way, or one of the best ways to combat COVID, to actually be in shape. Which is why are Republicans so against healthy food? Like, that was the big knock against Michelle Obama, that she wanted people to be healthy.
Because they took the garbage she forced on them in schools and they threw it away, and then they went to Wendy's. It didn't work.
Okay, but if you eat Wendy's,
16-year-old eat carrot sticks for lunch.
Why?
But you're right. I've asked this the whole time. Why don't we see more commercials for Jenny Craig or Weight Watchers saying, if you want to live, lose weight?
Well, I'm going to be honest. I mean, Dr. Fauci, this great public health man, I mean, he should be talking more about how you can prevent yourself from falling seriously ill of COVID. And the best prevention is to live a healthy lifestyle, is to exercise. I am really angry that none of our public health officials have talked about that at all the last 6 months.
No, they don't. And our governors shut down gyms and open up in McDonald's. I mean, those fast foods are all open. Liquor stores are open, but gyms are not. And even when they're open, they're under such restrictions that a lot of people aren't going back to the gym. It's nuts. They should emphasize that more. The mask mandate seems so important now. I think you're much more likely to live if you get in shape than if you wear a mask, but that's just me.
Do both. That's what I say. Do both.
I by the way, on just one more quick item on the coronavirus. I haven't confirmed this. I don't know if you have, Dave, but Clay Travis made a little video. He does these little videos last night. And he said the NFL conducted, I don't know what his source was because I didn't see it, a story attached to this, linked to this, but he said the NFL conducted 58,000 tests, 58,000, and they had 0 positives. They had some false positives, 77 false positives from one lab.
Right.
But that is remarkable when you think of 58,000 tests. These college kids are all going back, and one thing they have to do is get tested. I don't think you're going to see that kind of success, at colleges, because they're, all going to parties and making out and, doing things they're not supposed to do, hanging close together and not distancing and not wearing their masks and everything else. But is that really possible? 58,000 tests? 0?
I was Googling it this morning. I just did a quick Twitter search. I see nobody other than Clay Travis really talking about it.
Well, hopefully it's
maybe
true.
as a source.
Hopefully it's true, because that makes it feel like, football is back and ready to go. And if football, unlike baseball, basketball, and hockey, football's on schedule. Football is going to be there on Sunday afternoon in whatever it is, 3 weeks. And Monday night and it's going to feel normal, and that's going to do a lot to make the country feel normal, I think. But
yeah, I'm going to be honest. I mean, all these sports leagues, even Major League Baseball, which had the Marlins outbreak, the Cardinals outbreak, then a player on the Reds. I mean, if you look at the actual positive test rates, it is very low, and I think that I think Major League Baseball is really a terrible league, and Manfred has done a terrible job, but they deserve credit for shouldering on and not panicking, because it's fine. I mean,
you're right. You have to soldier on when it happens in college football, and it will.
Well, that's different though, because these are not paid professionals. college athletes, and that's the big difference.
No, it isn't. If they want to play, I mean, they want to play. You saw the Big Ten kids; they want to play. So why are you not going to play? Because 2 or 3 kids on the team get what is essentially for a kid, the flu. So you quarantine them. It's in fact is less dangerous than the flu. But I want to get to 2 more things because it's about we're not celebrating the downfall of famous people, but we sure are covering it and wondering, how you come back from something. And I want to get to Jerry Falwell Jr., but I also want to get your take on Tom Brennaman, the Cincinnati Reds announcer. In fact, he's a national announcer. He's on Fox National.
Not anymore.
Well, right. He was on the national games. He was a big deal. His father was a big deal, and he's a big deal, and he's a very highly regarded announcer. He, on a live, didn't think the mic was on, and he said just the most bizarre, inoffensive thing that I've heard lately. And he knew it immediately. He apologized during the game. He used the slur, the gay slur, the F word, talking about a city. We don't know what city, but we think it's San Francisco. Said it was the F capital of the world. And then he came on, an inning or 2 later?
No, it was actually the following game. So this was a doubleheader. He was caught in the live mic in the day game and then apologized in the 5th inning of the nightcap. And by the way, they made room for the home run call, which was
it was a home run during his apology. If you haven't seen it, it's bizarre. But
it's called professionalism. I mean, that's his job.
You gotta just, one last home run call. Why not?
The guy who knew right away that there was no defense. There was no saying I was misquoted, or I don't know if you saw that stupid controversy yesterday. I actually was going back and forth with Rex Chapman on Twitter, which was odd. But when the Lincoln Project tweeted out that somebody yelled at Trump's speech, somebody yelled out monkey when he started talking about Obama. And I went, holy crap. And I listened to the tape, and it's not at all monkey. It says, the guy says Spygate, as clear as could be. But this is what they do when they hate Trump so much. They make stuff up, they lie. And Rex Chapman tweeted it, and a bunch of other crazy lefties tweeted that the guy said monkey. He did not say monkey. It's clear as could be. But, that's that. We're done with that. On this, Alex, does Tom Brennan, do you forgive him, first of all? And or I should say, accept his apology? And do you think he survives?
Do I forgive him? My forgiveness is what matters.
That's a stupid.
No, I mean, I have to wait and see. I don't think that I am not in favor of just, as my good friend Steve Buckley wrote, and we wrote it out, Sports, I'm not in favor of just immediately firing Tom Brennan because I don't think that's effective. I mean, obviously he said a terrible thing. I think that he says this kind of stuff regularly because he said it with such impunity. But let's see him put in the work. I mean, there are examples of people in sports. Chris Culver, if you remember, was that cornerback for the 49ers years ago who said before the Super Bowl, like he would never shower with a gay person or something. Remember that? It was a pretty big story. And he's actually turned it around and become an advocate to the community. The best example of this is Tim Hardaway, who said very disparaging things about gay people and then has become a great ally later in his life. Yeah. So, I mean, there is the goal here should always be education.
Don't forget about me. I'm like, promoting, advancing Alex at every chance I get. People find that surprising because lots of liberals hate you, but I don't. I like you. So
Jerry's a great ally as well. I mean, he wore a hazmat suit when he first met me, and now we're down to virtual meetings.
I will say on the record that I don't want to shower with you. Okay. So that makes me homophobic. I don't want to, but I'm not sure he survives because, like I said, there's no defense. Even we've been in rooms with guys and, whatever, politically incorrect guys in locker rooms and, bars and everything. You don't hear people talk like that anymore. Talk like he talked on that mic.
I was telling one of my friends this over the weekend, and he accused me of living in a bubble. And I said, well, you do too. I have not. If someone just said that word just casually in conversation to me in a derogatory, I would be floored. I couldn't tell you the last time I heard someone say that.
I'm with you. They used to when I was a kid. It was
same. I've used it in high school. In high school, I used it all the time. I mean, it was just part of the vernacular, unfortunately.
And like I said, you don't hear it anymore. He sounded like he was, back in the 80s. And I don't know how you recover from that. Maybe he will. Nick Cannon still has a job. And Nick Cannon said the single most offensive thing I've ever heard a celebrity say on anything, on a podcast or on TV or radio. and he's still working, and he's got people defending him. And he said white people are savages, like close to animals.
Yeah, but that was part of like he was at least trying to back up, like he was
hold on, Dave Cullen.
No, hold on, no. I'm not defending the stance. I'm just saying he was on a podcast talking about it from a societal type issue. It was a conversation. This is literally like he's making a joke. He uses that word in his daily life.
Yes.
Often.
Did you see another announcer got caught typing the N-word, and when he meant to type nuggets, the guy's from Denver, right? The guy, this new guy.
Yeah, I forget his name. Yeah.
And he was tweeting about the Nuggets, and this is the second guy in a week who tweeted the N-words of Nuggets, and he was taken off the air, I believe, and he just said, "I typed the wrong word." I mean, I don't know how you like fire a guy for that if he's legitimately typing, because who would ever type that on purpose?
You can never do that. I would say though, just last thing on Brenneman, like I'm more interested in education and also diversity. Like the Cincinnati Reds now should make an effort to maybe hire an LGBT person as part of their broadcast team, or let's get some representation here as well. Just immediately firing the guy who says the bad word is not the answer. The only thing it does is put somebody out of a job. That's not the way we move forward. And, if Tom Brenneman had a record of saying homophobic things on live mics, then my opinion would be different. But just immediately firing is not the answer.
It'd be different if he had a record like, Joy Reid has a record, but she doesn't have to pay any price. Anyway, I know you're not enjoying the downfall of Tom Brenneman, but you are enjoying the downfall of Jerry Falwell Jr. And I have to say, I laughed out loud reading this because it was like trickling out. His wife had an affair with the pool boy. And at some point, if you're having an affair with the pool boy, don't you have to think that eventually he's going to talk about it? I mean, do you trust the pool boy to keep it between you?
Well, this has been going on for a couple of years. Was a story a couple of years ago. We found out about the business arrangement with the hostel in South Beach, and you're like, well, this is a little strange. And so, I think we kind of knew that something was going on, but we got it all yesterday.
So is it technically a fair if you like to watch it?
I don't know.
That is,
I'd say that's the new trend going around. We've reported on the story. They might have been a throuple this entire time.
They might have been.
Which Katie Hill, she resigned, but she defends it. People defend her. It's her personal life and all that, even though she's having an affair with an underling. This is
right. Well, that's the issue with Katie Hill. It was with a staffer.
Yes, and but Jerry Falwell's got a long history. You can't. There's a strict code at Liberty University. You can't have sex with, anybody. You can't even have sex with yourself. They have rules against everything. And if you missed the story, his wife had an affair with the pool boy. And the entire time, I believe 6 years, he liked to watch. Now, I've seen this on, an occasional adult film that I've stumbled across accidentally. And I can't relate to it at all. I'm sorry. There's things on there I say, that looks like fun, but this isn't one of them. To just
you've never been into voyeurism.
That's what that is. Watching another guy with your wife.
It's a little like masochistic a little bit, is it not? It's a little. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe that's what you want to feel. Maybe you want it to hurt. I don't know, but this is not something I ever want to do. I have no desire to do. I'm not a kinky guy. What can I say? Not my style.
I'm not kink shaming. That's fine if that's what the Falwells are into, but it's hypocrisy.
It's hypocrisy. I was going to say, if someone else got caught doing this, Jerry Falwell would be the first. Jerry Falwell Jr. would be the first guy to condemn them. And now we know. By the way, there's a video you have to see. It's bizarre. He's doing this weird weightlifting thing, pelvic thrusts. He's got a barbell across his thighs. He's back on a bench, and he's doing these pelvic thrusts. And two girls, like teenage girls, stand on the bar. I know it sounds confusing. Google it, look it up. It's weird and it's bizarre. I saw that like one day before the story broke, so I guess it was no secret.
That feels weirder than watching your wife bang another dude.
Yeah, it says, why is Jerry Falwell doing pelvic thrusts with teenage girls? And I look at it and I go, good question.
Yeah.
Who are they? Are they students? But I think a lot of people were not surprised that Jerry Falwell has a little bit of a dark side. By the way, he says he's not quitting. They said they're removing him as president of Liberty University. He says he's not quitting. So the fun has just begun for Jerry Falwell Jr. and the folks at Liberty University. I saw a story on the football team and how they will react to Jerry Falwell's downfall at Liberty University. But anyway, we'll see what happens today. We'll see what happens. I know Kenosha is still burning. And I know that'll be a big part of the RNC tonight. Tiffany, don't forget, Tiffany Trump speaking tonight. Don't want to miss that.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what he has to say.
I'm excited. I don't think she's not the black sheep of the family, but she's not involved in everything like Ivanka and Jared and Don Jr. Good luck to her. I'll be watching. And good luck to the good people of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Thanks to George Price for joining us. He's our law enforcement expert. And thanks to Alex Reimer, and thanks to Shea Concrete and Allied Paving and DCU and all our wonderful sponsors and supporters. You can support us by supporting them. We really appreciate it. Good job, Cullinane.
We got a lot of announcements to make this week, by the way.
We do have a good, biggest
one that's going to happen this week is a new logo, by the we a new logo.
Oh,
yeah,
new GCP logo.
We are eliminating the what was it? It was why am I blanking on Sims' first name?
Phil Sims?
No, the character on the cartoon it doesn't look like Jerry Callahan. It looks like a cross between like Chris Sims.
Chris Sims.
And who's the other guy? Oh, Bill Walton. Yes. Yeah. We're getting rid of Bill Walton.
I came around on the logo. I like it. But, we have reasons for changing, and we'll tell you all about those later this week and tell you our big announcement later this week. It is pretty good. I know we used to do this on the radio all the time. We come up with our big announcement. It'll be
our producers got new contracts.
Our producers got a 10% raise, and everyone's going, "What? Why is that an announcement?" We always said this is stupid. Remember, we had one that we built it up, and they said, "We're flying private to the Super Bowl." Like,
yes.
Whose idea to do that? Like that still happens in radio. Like who pitches that?
Producers,
okay.
and who are mostly stupid. You know that.
Yes.
That's kind of a trait in producers.
Yes.
But I'm Jerry Callahan. This is the Callahan Podcast, and we will do it again tomorrow.